Hey everybody, today I want to talk to you about why big merchants don't like cash discounting. Now, when I make my videos, I usually try to have them kind of generally applicable to individual agents and ISO execs. This one is really geared specifically to the ISOs out there that are just selling cash discounting, and there are a growing number of them. I talk to them all the time. They're excited, they're making a lot of money, and one of the big kind of ideas behind this cash discount only ISO is that you really don't have to train your sales agents to understand too much about the industry. Is kind of the general idea. Hey, all we sell is cash discounting, so we're going to hire reps and we're going to train them that you go in and tell people we don't charge credit card processing fees. Okay, well, that's pretty easy. We just charge $39 a month or whatever it is. And I get it. And it's actually a brilliant strategy that's made a lot of people a lot of money in this business because they're able to get agents up and going a lot faster. They're able to generate leads a lot faster. And so it's really a very streamlined process. But what I want to talk to you about today is why big merchants don't like cash discounting, because one of the problems that's emerging with these ISOs is that the average volume on these merchant accounts is very low. And so it's like, okay, we're just selling cash discounting. Well, when you look at a regular ISO that sells both, and you look at their cash discount portfolio versus their traditional portfolio, two things are going to become apparent very quickly. Number one, it's going to become apparent that the margin on the cash discount deals is like 3 or 4 times as high as the traditional. And that's the pull, right? I mean, that's awesome. You're making, whatever it is, 150 basis points of markup on the cash discount portfolio, and you're making 30 basis points of markup or 40 on the traditional, So it's like, well, obviously we want to sell cash discount. Maybe, okay. But here's another fact that's being overlooked, and that is, yes, the basis point margin on the cash discount portfolio is significantly higher than traditional. However, also the attrition rate, the attrition on the traditional portfolio is actually lower than it is on the cash discount for one very important reason. And that reason is small merchants go out of business. Okay. And again, I think everybody knows me enough to know I'm a big fan of cash discounting, but let's face it, the early adopters of cash discounting may not be quite as concerned about customer experience, even though I understand, I'm kind of like, it's like some of you are like, oh, wait a second, James, I thought you said cash discounting is great for the customer. It is. But I'm just saying, as a business owner, one who's like hyper concerned with the consumer experience is probably going to be a little more hesitant to say yes to cash discounting than one who doesn't really care that much about his customers. Right? So again, I understand the dichotomy here because I'm kind of talking out of both sides of my mouth, but I'm just saying, the type of business owner the last few years that said, yeah, I'll charge more money to my customers that pay with a card. Those are traditionally the type of merchants that are smaller and more likely to go out of business. And those numbers have been playing out in portfolios that I've seen. Okay. So the other thing that's really important to look at these numbers is that the average volume on the cash discount side is significantly lower than the traditional side, meaning that larger, more successful businesses who are more likely to stay in business, those merchant accounts are less likely to go with cash discounting. Well, that creates a pretty big problem because if all you sell is cash discounting and the only thing you've trained your salespeople to sell is cash discounting, well, then when they run into those larger merchant accounts where, yeah, maybe the basis points of markup would only be 20 or 30 basis points of markup versus 150, but this larger business does $150,000 a month versus 8 or 9 or 12,000 or 20,000 a month on the cash discount side. And this larger business is going to be in business in 10 years, and this smaller business is going to be out of business next year, right? So there are some big advantages to these larger traditional accounts, and these opportunities are being completely missed, okay? So why is it these big merchants, don't like cash discounting? Let's talk about that, and then let's talk about what to do about it as an ISO that sells only cash discounting. How do you tap into that larger market, okay? So the reason that they don't like it is really 2 or 3 things that come to the top of my head. Number one on my list is technology, okay? These larger merchants, even if they start to like the idea of cash discounting, how exactly are they going to implement it? They already have a very complex point of sale system that maybe doesn't have a feature where you can add a service fee. Or if they do, maybe it's a surcharge feature, or they don't have it at all. Whatever it is, the technology side is a lot more confusing for them. It's not this whole cut and dry pitch of we're going to eliminate your processing fees. It's like, no, we're going to help you increase your revenue, which is going to offset the processing fees, right? The second thing is many of these cash discount only ISOs have these really rigid pricing constraints. So they go to this merchant and say, yeah, our program is 3.99%. Well, this merchant has, this big merchant has maybe a CFO or a controller, and they know what's going on. And they're like, well, wait a second. Why would we pay you 3.99%? We can implement this ourselves. We could take the price up and we don't even need you, So all of a sudden it's like, well, wait a second. Now we're running into a pretty big brick wall. So problem number one is the technology. Problem number two is the pricing. Problem number three is compliance, because these larger institutions have an attorney. You better believe that they're going to ask their attorney about something like this. And when an attorney digs into this issue, they're going to be very confused, just like most of the CEOs of the processing companies I talk to in my consulting practice are confused about cash discounting and what it is and compliance, and why I'm confused about it half the time, honestly. I mean, it's very confusing. It changes every month, So the attorney's probably going to say, that's a risk. Why don't we sit back and wait a little while? So there's several really valid reasons why a larger merchant may not want to do cash discounting, not to mention the reason that small ones don't as well, which is they're worried about their customer. So we have to talk through that. So my point is, your odds of selling a larger merchant doing $100,000 a month, $80,000 a month, $200,000 a month, the odds of selling them on cash discounting are significantly less than selling somebody doing $8,000 to $20,000 or $30,000 a month. And so as a result of that dichotomy, you're going to miss big opportunities if all you're selling is cash discounting. Now, maybe you say, James, I don't care. I'm making a ton of money with cash discount only. I'm not going to get those big deals. Fine. I get that, but let me just throw one idea at you that might help you out. It might be a good idea for your company to leverage these salespeople that sell cash discount only for two purposes. Number one, to sell cash discounting to smaller merchant accounts or those who want to do it, right? But number two, to collect statements for larger merchants who are not interested in cash discounting, okay? So one of the things you can do is you can train your agents to say, look, you don't maybe need to know everything about the industry, but let's give you a little bit of industry knowledge so you can talk intelligently with a merchant, which honestly I think is a good idea. It's always to me a good idea to understand the industry you're in and to understand the competitors, So even though maybe your reps are just selling cash discount, so they don't need to know what Interchange Plus is. They don't need to know what tier pricing is. They don't need to know what basis points of markup are, Well, I would argue that, yeah, they do need to know what interchange is and network access brand usage fees are. And, you kind of need to know something about the industry you're in. I think that kind of goes without saying. So give them that little bit of knowledge, then give them an approach so that after the merchant says no to the cash discount, then they are able to say, hey, I totally understand. I get where you're coming from. You're a larger business. You already have this technology solution. But here's the thing. We are experts at implementing these programs, and I think you would agree that there's an interesting opportunity maybe down the road here. Maybe it's in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, but at some point, especially when, say, surcharging is national, you may want to implement one of these types of programs, and we are experts at that. So here's what I'd like to do. We would like to explore starting a relationship with you on the traditional side. We'll take a look at your statement. We can, minimize your cost at, right now just in our effort to get that relationship, because we know long-term you probably are going to be interested in one of our lower cost cash discount type programs that we're able to help you pass the cost on to the consumer down the road when it makes sense for you. So what I'd love to do is get a copy of a statement, have our team do a complete statement analysis, and we will offer you an unbeatable rate just to get your business so we have that relationship, okay? That's a very powerful pitch and something that's going to work 1 out of 10 times, right? Well, right now you're getting 0 of those deals, but many of you have 15, 20, 100 agents out selling only cash discounting and nothing else. It might be a good idea to get those 100 agents to send you one statement a month from a larger account, then have an inside salesperson, or even if depending on your geography, somebody local that can go back out and sell those larger accounts, because right now you're really missing out on those larger deals, which really could become very profitable down the road as things progress. And you want to have those relationships so that you're the one that goes in when surcharging is in all 50 states and you can present that or whatever it might be. But again, just having those larger accounts where the actual gross margin is not that far off from your cash discount deals, really, because the volume is so much higher, even though the basis points of markup are lower. And of course, the attrition is like massively lower. So food for thought. If you sell cash discount only, think about maybe expanding that out to some kind of a lead generation type thing where your agents are also getting you leads on larger deals that you can close to increase your average volume of your merchant accounts and help long-term with attrition by selling larger, well-established businesses. My name is James Shepard. Thanks for watching and listening.